Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're doing a comprehensive synthesis of knowledge from an expert guide that's focused entirely on understanding and overcoming anxiety.
hmm
We're trying to create a shortcut for you, really. We're not just aiming for a surface level understanding. We want to get into the complex wiring of worry so you can be truly well informed.
And let's put the core message right out front. I think this is really important. Anxiety isn't a simple problem.
No.
It's a complex, multifaceted emotion, and crucially, it's a completely natural response to the stressors we face.
A natural response. That's key.
It is. The material makes it absolutely clear that it is not a sign of personal weakness, and, because it's rooted in identifiable mechanics, it is entirely a treatable condition.
That's a crucial starting point.
Hmm.
So our mission today is to zero in on the deep roots of anxiety, the biology, the cognitive traps, and then give you some immediate actionable strategies that the experts are recommending right now.
Let's get into it.
Okay, let's unpack this. We all know anxiety is pervasive, but why is it such a dominant experience in the modern world? What are the primary underlying causes here?
What the sources really show is that the causes function like a combination lock.
Combination lock.
Yeah. Genetic, environmental, and psychological factors all have to align for persistent anxiety to take hold. It's almost never just one thing.
So let's start with the physical then, the biological anchor that holds that worry in place. Where does the body's stress response even begin?
It really starts with the body's internal alarm system. The technical term is the HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis.
Right.
Just think of it as a three-part circuit that controls our reaction to stress. This system is essential for survival. It's our ancient fight-or-flight mechanism.
Designed to protect us from like a bear in the woods.
A bear or maybe a demanding boss. Same system.
So it's a good system inherently, but what happens when anxiety sets in?
The problem is chronic activation. When that HPA axis is constantly bombarded, not by a bear, but by endless deadlines, the news, financial stress, it just becomes hyper-responsive.
It's always on.
It's always running hot. And that chronic activation is what ultimately leads to the development of anxiety disorders.
And if genetics provides the predisposition for that, how much weight did the sources put on the environment? Is it nature versus nurture or...
It's absolutely an intense interaction. The sources acknowledge there's a strong genetic component, sure. Some people are just born with a predisposition.
But it's not destiny.
Exactly. Genetics are not destiny. That predisposition only becomes a problem when it interacts with environmental and psychological triggers.
And speaking of environment, modern life seems perfectly designed to keep that HPA axis perpetually activated.
It really does. The material highlights these unique stress factors that just didn't exist a generation ago. Think about the 24-hour news cycle.
Social media.
Social media, constant connectivity, you can never truly clock out.
It creates this perpetual sense of urgency.
It does. And this combination creates what we could call perpetual anxiety, where you feel obligated to respond and perform constantly.
That leads to burnout.
Inevitably.
Yeah.
Your internal resources are just being drained by these never-ending demands. You're essentially in a low-grade fight-or-flight state all day long.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. Let's move from that big system down to the specific engine in the brain. What tiny structure is driving this immediate, exaggerated threat response?
For that, we need to focus on the amygdala.
The amygdala.
It's a small, almond-shaped cluster of neurons, and it's widely called the anxiety center. Its job is to process fear, memory, emotional reactions.
And in anxiety, it's just overactive.
It becomes overactive. That's the core issue. It's designed to spot danger, but in an anxious state, it starts mistaking a mouse for a monster.
That's a perfect analogy. So once the amygdala signals this exaggerated threat, how does that familiar physical on-edge sensation, how does it manifest?
That's the brain's full threat response system kicking in. This involves an overactivity of the sympathetic nervous system, the SNS.
Fight or flight.
Your classic fight or flight. Increased heart rate, shallow breathing, blood pressure goes up. At the same time, the SNS actively suppresses its counterpart, the parasympathetic nervous system, or PNS.
And the TNS is the system we want active.
Absolutely. The PNS is responsible for rest and digestion, the relaxation response. So when you're anxious, your brain is essentially pressing the accelerator, the SNS.
While disabling the brake.
Exactly. The calm down mechanism is just temporarily taken offline.
So what about the chemical side of this? If the structures are firing too fast, what are the neurotransmitters doing or not doing?
Right. The neurotransmitters are key chemical messengers, and anxiety is often linked to a significant imbalance. We mostly look at two. Serotonin,
The calming one.
the calming neurotransmitter. That's what it's often called. And the other one is GABA.
What does GABA do?
GABA is an inhibitory neurotransmitter.
Hmm.
It functions like a dimmer switch, basically, to calm down overactive neurons.
Okay.
So when there's an imbalance, low levels of these stabilizing chemicals, the exaggerated response from the amygdala just continues unchecked. And the research also connects this to long-term physical changes.
Like what?
Chronic stress can cause the hippocampus, that's the area for memory and learning, to physically shrink.
It actually shrinks.
It shrinks, which further impairs our ability to cope.
So if our brain is structurally and chemically primed for worry, how do we even begin to regain control? The sources really emphasized how big a role our own negative thoughts play in this.
Our internal dialogue is highly significant. It's really what keeps the cycle turning.
Right.
The sources outline that people prone to anxiety frequently rely on negative thought patterns, like catastrophizing.
That's immediately assuming the worst case scenario, like a delayed email means you're fired.
Exactly. Not that the server's down.
Yeah,
And the other one is rumination.
that repetitive worry, just looping it.
Looping that worry over and over. Catastrophizing and rumination create this powerful, self-reinforcing, vicious cycle of fear.
So how do we intervene in that? The sources pointed heavily toward cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT.
Right. CBT is framed as the proven method for intervening. It operates on something called the cognitive model, which is simple, but also pretty profound.
Who cares?
Your thoughts, your feelings, and your behaviors are all tightly interconnected. If you change one, you inevitably impact the others. That's the mechanism for change.
So what's the most actionable, core technique from CBT? How does a person actually use this in real life?
The core technique is challenging negative thoughts. The material encourages you to pause and actively question your internal critic.
So you have to ask yourself.
You have to ask, is this thought really true, or is this just my anxiety talking? Or is there another way to look at this situation? It reframes the thought from an objective truth into what it is, a subjective and often flawed perspective.
That sounds great on paper, but if someone's dealing with chronic anxiety, it must be so hard to challenge a thought that feels 100% real in the moment.
That's a critical point. It is incredibly difficult. And that's why the material stresses a component that is often overlooked. Self-compassion.
Self-compassion.
Yes, you're not just trying to intellectually overpower your feelings. You have to treat yourself with kindness, with understanding. Not with self-criticism or shame when you struggle to challenge a thought.
So it's the foundation.
Self-compassion, the necessary foundation for breaking the cycle without just adding more self-punishment.
That makes perfect sense. So we have a long-term strategy, but what about immediate relief? What can you do right now in the moment when anxiety strikes?
For that, we rely on breathing and grounding techniques. They work because they kind of bypass the thinking brain and work directly on the autonomic nervous system.
They're always available.
The immediately available tools, yes.
So give us the specific breathing exercise recommended.
The gold standard here is the 4-7-8 breathing technique, sometimes called the relaxation breath.
Okay, 4-7-8. How does it work?
The instructions are precise. You inhale slowly through your nose for a count of 4, you hold the breath for a count of 7, and then you exhale slowly, deliberately, through your mouth for a count of 8.
Why is the exhale so much longer?
Because slowing and lengthening the exhale is the fastest way to signal safety to your body. It directly activates the vagus nerve and switches the focus from the sympathetic fight or flight back toward the parasympathetic, the rest and digest system.
So it forces the body to slow down.
It forces the body's stress response to slow down, no matter what the amygdala is shouting.
And if the racing thoughts are just too loud for breathing, then you interrupt them with grounding.
Precisely. That's the 5-4-3-2-1 exercise. It's designed to aggressively pull your awareness out of your anxious mind and anchor it in your immediate physical surroundings.
Using your senses.
Using your 5 senses. Identify 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 you can hear, 2 you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. It's a very effective mental distraction.
You also mentioned physical activity as a powerful immediate relief mechanism.
It is, and the science here is great. Physical activity releases endorphins, which are these natural, potent mood boosters.
Right.
These endorphins actually bind to opioid receptors in the brain, and that produces a feeling of natural pain relief, relaxation, and calm. It's a chemical reset.
So now if we connect all this to the bigger picture,
Hmm.
the material emphasizes that long-term management needs a more holistic view.
Exactly. It's not just about managing symptoms. It's about integrating critical lifestyle factors.
Like social connection, which is often dismissed as just a nice to have, but it's foundational.
It is absolutely essential. Building a strong support network is critical because social connections trigger a powerful biological response. They cause the release of oxytocin,
The bonding hormone.
that powerful hormone that promotes trust, relaxation, and bonding. So connecting with others actively reduces your cortisol levels and boosts your resilience.
And what about the diet connection? Is the advice just the standard eat healthy, or is there something more specific for anxiety?
The material gets nuanced here. It focuses on inflammation.
Yeah.
A high intake of processed foods, sugar, unhealthy fats that can actively exacerbate anxiety symptoms by driving up inflammation and elevating cortisol.
The stress hormone.
Right. And the countermeasure involves focusing on omega-3 fatty acids, so things found in fatty fish and seeds.
And what do the omega-3s specifically do?
Well, they reduce systemic inflammation, but critically, they support the production of those key neurotransmitters we talked about, like serotonin and dopamine.
Ah, so it's providing the building blocks.
Nutrition isn't just about general health. It's about providing the building blocks for a stable mood.
So finally, long-term progress requires a consistent mindset shift. How did the guide define resilience and boundaries?
Well, long-term success relies on maintaining that growth mindset, viewing challenges not as threats that overwhelm you, but as opportunities for growth.
Okay.
And just as important is establishing clear boundaries. The material is very firm on this. Practicing self-care is not a luxury. It's a physiological necessity.
And that includes saying no.
That absolutely includes learning to say no to commitments, expectations, or even people who chronically trigger or exacerbate your anxiety.
That really brings everything full circle. This deep dive has shown us that anxiety is rooted in, identifiable biology, an overactive HPA axis, an oversensitive amygdala, a neurotransmitter imbalance.
Right.
But it is entirely manageable through deliberate cognitive challenge, like CBT, and these immediate, actionable physical tools like the 4-7-8 breath.
Exactly. And, to leave you with a final thought that builds on that connection between the brain and our environment,
Okay.
the source material repeatedly noted that trauma-past difficult experiences can permanently impact the brain by leaving the amygdala in a state of hypervigilance.
Always on alert.
Always on alert. And this leads to an important question. When we seek to overcome anxiety, are we merely seeking to break the cycle of negative thoughts? Or are we fundamentally working to reclaim control over a threat response system that was maybe permanently altered by events we couldn't control?
That's a powerful reframing.
I think so. Focusing on that idea, reclaiming agency over a reactive system, it highlights both hope and, I think, true resilience for the long journey ahead.